latest episode of the Lisa Pezik Show. Today, I'm so excited to talk about something that you might be and you don't even know, or something that you've been in contact with someone who has this superpower and has this trait, and we are going to pick it apart, talk about it. What does it mean to be a highly sensitive entrepreneur? Ooh, today I have with me Heather Dominick. Heather, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you. I am so looking forward to this conversation, Lisa.
Me too. When this came in my inbox, I thought, oh, yes, we need to shed light on this. We need to talk about this. We need to support whatever kind of entrepreneur you are and own that and do things differently. And I know that's exactly what you help people do. So you are the creator of businessmiracles.com, where you help highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders have more impact, more income, and have been doing things differently since 2010. So how did this... So are you a highly sensitive entrepreneur? Is that where this came from? Or how did this?
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think anyone who is not highly sensitive would have any business supporting, mentoring, anything else with others who are highly sensitive. Yes. So in real short scoop, as much as possible, I started my self-employed career about 2003. And at that time, I knew absolutely nothing about business. I didn't know anything about internet marketing. I came from being a high school drama and English teacher. Mm-hmm. So I was really super naive and ignorant, and all of that perhaps worked in my favor or not, depending on the day. But what I can say is, I really hustled my tail to build my business. And I got to a point where I had reached this financial success. I brought my business across the 7-figure mark for the first time, and would love to say that like balloons fell from the sky and confetti, just rained down, but it was literally exactly the exact opposite experience. I was massively overexhausted. I was overworked. I was overwhelmed, and I was really questioning like everything that I was doing. I was really thinking to myself, like, I don't know, if this is what it means to be successful in business, then I'm not sure that this is what I want to do. And if I'm not doing this, then what am I doing? Because I don't necessarily really want to be going back to the, traditional teaching classroom. So I really went into like a dark night of the soul, and I just really went into like a deep space of inquiry. And through that process, I was brought to a woman whose name is Dr. Elaine Aron, and she is a psychologist and researcher, and one of the founding researchers on what it means to be a highly sensitive person. And I had never heard that phrase before at that time, but the more that I worked with her and I really dove deep into what that meant, I suddenly started having just massive light bulb moments, and everything started making sense. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why everything is feeling so incredibly difficult for me. And so I really started re-engineering everything that I was doing and began to understand like, okay, I can be in business, for example, but I have to really go about it differently than the way that it's traditionally taught. And especially the way that trainings and teachings were happening at that time, which was about, 2009 or 10. And that was really the beginning. And then from there, it's just built into, a massive global movement. And I've developed a massive, great body of my own work to really serve those of us who are highly sensitive so that we can be successful as entrepreneurs or leaders, in our fields or even just in our families, if that's what we choose.
I love that. You talk about those light bulb moments that made it all make sense. That why is it like this? Why do I feel like this? Or what is happening? Can you share what were some of those, or what was the most impactful light bulb moment, or what were some of those?
Well, I mean, gosh, there's so many in so many areas, but I think probably two really stand out. And one was about how I went about organizing my time and my day. And like everything that I had learned in terms of like traditional structure or like what you need to do as an entrepreneur, I just really kind of like tossed all of that out the window. And I was like, okay, like what do I need so that my nervous system is really like in optimal space to be able to, create and produce. And what came out of that was just very, very different than, again, traditional teachings and trainings. And then the other is with selling and selling conversations. And I really completely just reconfigured how I was going about that process. And that was something that I had already started before understanding that I was highly sensitive. I think it was just naturally intuitive. And once I understood that I was highly sensitive, I realized that intuition is one of our primary strengths. So I think I had done that, but I had doubted myself because what I was doing was so different than, again, what was being taught. Understanding that I was highly sensitive helped me to really claim how it was that I was going about selling and really then be able to turn around and teach it to others who are highly sensitive as well. So those two areas, I would say two big pillars of change for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same, but I get that a lot where people will say, man, you're so extroverted and, you love being around people. And I'm like, I do. But then after it's done, I need to have quiet time. I need to go inward. I love being around people, but I can't go call after call after call after call, training after training after training after training.
Right.
I need to, because I do take on, I've had to learn how to not take on other people's energies and other people's emotions.
Exactly.
And is that what you mean by like organizing your time in your day, like to give you space, or dive a little bit more into that for me?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it. I think this is probably a good place to just give a real snippet about what it actually means to be highly sensitive. So, and just kind of like, again, a real quick synopsis is, first of all, it's how you are brought into the world. It's how your nervous system is biologically wired and neurologically wired. So I always like to say, your parents didn't do it to you and you didn't pick it up on the playground. And it's not because of that weird purple drink that you had in college. Like you are literally born into the world highly sensitive. And what that means is your nervous system takes in stimulation at a much higher degree than someone who's not highly sensitive. Now, when you are untrained as a highly sensitive, that is going to feel like a real burden to you. It's going to feel even like a weakness or a detriment or, perhaps even a flaw. Again, if you are untrained and you don't even understand like what's happening, you'll feel like almost like a freak, right? Like, gosh, like, why do I have such difficulty with something that seems like everybody else, handles no problem? Once you start to learn how to train your nervous system to really work for you, then it really does become an asset, or you used the word superpower earlier, and I would really agree with that. So with that in mind, then back to time and how you set up your schedule, it definitely looks different for every highly sensitive. There for sure isn't, like one golden rule book for time. But what it's about is learning about your circadian rhythm, when you are most productive and, where a higher level of energy might be required from you, and then what you do need in order to be able to replenish, which is like some of what I heard you speaking about. So definitely I can relate to, what you shared early on, when I started my first coaching business, I definitely had those back-to-back calls. I would just be on the phone, for like an entire day. But now I understand more about like what I need so that my schedule is paced, that can look very much different from day to day, and also week to week. If I have something that is a larger project, I understand I can't follow it up with an immediately another larger project. So, you start working with components of scheduling in a very, very different perspective than, again, probably anything that you were ever taught in school or any business trainings. And I'm pretty sure they're not teaching this in MBA programs either. So.
And then, like, do you communicate that to your assistant? If you're not in charge of your schedule, do you bring that up in conversations to say, hey, I'm highly sensitive, or I need some time to breathe, or, this is going to be a really heavy meeting for me. I can't have anything else this afternoon, before or after that. Do you use that language, or how do you frame those conversations when you want to share that?
It's a great, great question. And, for me, my team completely understands because this is what we do. So they like completely know that I'm highly sensitive, and they know all of the tools and the teachings, and even those on the team who aren't highly sensitive, like, they completely get it. So our culture is definitely, a little bit of an enigma and very unique in that way. But I've also really built that, and I've created that. And then we also teach what we refer to as difficult conversations, and how to have difficult conversations as a highly sensitive entrepreneur, as a highly sensitive leader, whether that be with team, with staff, with family. And, again, that will look slightly different for each person depending on, what relationship dynamic the difficult conversation is taking place in. So for someone, it might make sense to say like, hey, this is what I need, and this is because I'm highly sensitive. And in other arenas and spaces and dynamics, that won't be helpful. That would actually work against you. So, that's where, like, in the training program, we'll work with you to help you get clear about what language will be most effective. But the common thread is, yes, to begin to first understand, and even more so deeply know, what it is that you need. So again, that you can be effective, most effective in terms of your level of operation, and then how to most effectively communicate that. And I love that you brought this up, because again, when a highly sensitive is untrained, what just automatically happens is we subjugate. Right. So one of the best pieces of research, I think, that come out of Dr. Elaine Aron's work is that, again, you were born into the world highly sensitive, but there are only 20% of us who are born into the world highly sensitive. That's the research. So I always like to say that the world is basically designed for the other 80%. So pretty much unconsciously, somewhere along the line, as a highly sensitive, probably in school, maybe in your family, you picked up, I'm different. And then you picked up and made the meaning, oh, this is wrong. Because I'm the smaller percent, there must be something wrong with me. So I have to change myself to fit in with everyone else. And then it starts to just become this automatic habit and pattern that, again, is practically unconscious, because it's just so ingrained from so many ways of it being, repeated in various areas and places throughout a highly sensitive's life. So that understanding what you need, and then that ability to communicate it, is so, so key, and absolutely a massive success component for being an entrepreneur, or again, a leader in any arena, for sure.
Yeah, I think about some of the deepest conversations that friends or peers or colleagues have shared with me in the more corporate kind of space, but I'm told I'm too sensitive. I'm told I need to toughen up. I'm told I take things too seriously. I don't know how to take a joke. And I'm like, no, what the person, highly sensitive or not, what the person said to you is wrong. Time out. It's not you. Let's look at, this person and what they actually said to you. So I love that you brought that up about like owning that and acknowledging that, but not taking that on, that what you're doing is wrong, or, maybe different because you're in that 20%, but it's not wrong. And I love how you keep using the word you're untrained. It doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you don't know.
Right.
It literally it makes me think about my 7-year-old when he first learned to ride a bike. It's like, there's a reason why there were training wheels and he could learn. I didn't just say, yes, Oliver, go jump on your bike and we'll see you at the end of the block. Right.
Right.
I love how you're using the word untrained.
Yeah, well, it's so true. I mean, just because, again, it's just not traditionally taught. I love that you brought up the corporate culture, because that's definitely kind of like, its own sphere, right? And hopefully the pandemic will support a massive culture change, across the board when it comes to corporate. But what it really honestly makes me think of is that same mentality, I'll say, was very much present when I was first starting my business. In a lot of the coaching industry, a lot of the internet marketing industry, and it just sadly kind of shows like lack of innovation and creativity, right? It was like a lot of the people who were quote unquote on the stages at the time just came from corporate. So much of the message was like, if you want to be successful in business, stop being so sensitive and you have to be tough. And, and at the conferences, like everyone would be like yelling and screaming. And that was really what put me over the edge and had me questioning, am I supposed to do this? And I share all of that because it was such a revelation and so important for me to be like, wait, that's not what is needed in order to be successful in business. That's just one way. That's just one culture that's kind of in a box, even though language of out of the box was being used all over the place. So that's the work that I do with, everyone that I mentor is you can create it, and you can create it in a way that works for you. We're just going to need to go about it a little bit differently, and we're going to need your willingness in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's even with me with sales conversations or those, I might say, here's some ideas or here's a script to get you started if you're truly stuck. But you need to take those words and make them your own. This is the way I would say it. But if that is not comfortable and makes sense and authentic to you, then you need to change it. Take the concept, but make it yours. And that's what I was thinking. Yeah, when you were saying about you got to do it this way and you got to no. No period.
Right. Yes. No period.
For you. And sales, you talked about the selling conversations. That is a huge thing. And there's even in my neck of the woods, it's pain point marketing. And I'm like, no. So what is that like for a highly sensitive entrepreneur who's being told that pain point marketing is get them? I actually had a trainer once say, you can't just like tell them, it's got to be like a punch in the face. And I'm like, literally, and everyone in the group coaching program, right, is like, oh, it's got to be like, and I'm going, no, I don't want to punch anyone in the face. Right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it just, if you didn't live through it, you would be like, okay, wait, that's not real. That's like a Coen Brothers movie.
I did not make this up. I swear to goodness it's got to be like a punch in the face. Who would ever do business with someone that punched them in the face? Please.
There's just so much wrong with that. We just don't have time to
unpack that, right? But even, yeah, I'm glad I found a fellow person that can laugh at that and see. I'm sure listeners, you can as well. Like, but in his mind, that was, it makes me think of that person on the stage that you said, that's like, you got to do it this way. You got to punch him in the face. And no. So
no, period.
What are sales conversations like for someone who's highly sensitive?
Yes. So like I said, I started to just intuitively go about sales differently, even before understanding that I was highly sensitive. And that's really because I was just terrible at it. And I really wanted to succeed because I knew that I was really good at what I did. I knew that I was a really excellent coach. But I was like, okay, I've got to figure this out. And everything I was learning, the punch in the face approach, was not working for me.
You can use that now.
I will credit you every single time. So yes, that approach that you just described would absolutely shut down a highly sensitive. And, again, your nervous system is wired to take in stimulation at a higher degree. So there's a great sense of empathy, right? That is one of the 12 top highly sensitive strengths that I've identified. But the flip side of that, back to being untrained, is when you shift from empathy as a strength into empathy as a shadow, which becomes a lot of analysis paralysis, a lot of over responsibility, meaning that because you can feel what someone else is feeling, you think or believe that you are responsible for that. All of that gets in the way of a selling conversation, when especially you take the punch in the face approach. But when you shift the selling conversation to really come from the strength perspective, the strengths that we have as highly sensitives, and just some of those top 12 that are really, really helpful in a selling conversation, is that empathy. Absolutely is our strength of intuition. Also, our strength of being deep listeners, our strength of being deep thinkers, our strength of being deep feelers, and then allowing the conversation to slow down. So where in traditional sales, it is the punch in the face and get them to say yes out of typically fear and some kind of scarcity approach. Yep. To instead really slow down the conversation, bring it into one-on-one relating, which again, we're very good at as highly sensitives, and to apply just the process that a person naturally, psychologically goes through when making a decision. So when you understand that, okay, let's break down the process of decision making. And now let me, as the entrepreneur, be the guide. Be the guide and help the person through the decision-making process. And for both of us to really decide, is the work that I do going to make sense for you? Now, typically the entrepreneurs that I mentor and people who are called to be entrepreneurs who are also highly sensitive tend to be in service-based businesses. And that makes sense because, again, it just plays to all of our strengths. And when I first started my work serving other highly sensitives, it was primarily coaches and healers and creatives, but it's expanded since then massively. So we, for example, we have people who are in insurance. We have highly sensitive entrepreneurs who are in real estate. We have highly sensitive entrepreneurs who are representing products or even sciences. And yet it still all comes down to being able to have that one-on-one relatable conversation. And also another shift that I made, definitely after understanding I was highly sensitive, was to naturally break the conversation, the selling conversation, into a two-part conversation, to just remove that element of pressure that, again, traditional sales tells you that you have to have. And again, as long as you're following a process that really is aligned with what does a person need to do when they're making a decision, then actually having that space works for you rather than against you. You still want to keep it within a reasonable time frame. We're not talking conversation 1 year and then conversation 2 the next year. It's a close closed container, but still just some space. Like we don't have to be in that high pressure and again, the sense of scarcity. And so what happens then, one is that the highly sensitive entrepreneurs I mentor suddenly are able to have successful selling conversations, and they're really able to finally just be able to do the work that they came here to do. And that's the most beautiful part, right? Because that's where the suffer and struggle comes in. Like I had experience, like I know I'm really good at this, so I know I'm here to help people. How do I be able to do that? But I think probably one of the most valuable pieces of feedback I get about the selling conversation all the time is that it feels like a spiritual experience, and not just for the highly sensitive entrepreneur, but the highly sensitive entrepreneurs I mentor, they get that feedback from their prospects. And to me, I think awesome, right? Like that's a new way of doing business. And to me, it's absolutely more healthy than punch you in the face.
Yeah, it's a great way to start the relationship together when you work with someone.
Right.
And what was coming up for me when you were talking was as simple as I see you. I see you as a human being. I see you. All those, I've experienced that when I was first hiring men, the punch you in the face, mentors and people. That taught me a lot. And I would get on calls with programs or, mentors or things that I was going to join. And it's like, well, you're not serious about your business if you don't say yes today, and you're not fully committed to your, and in my brain, I'm like, no, you're just a dick. Like, that's why I don't, I am serious about my business. I'm 100% committed.
Yes.
Like, you're a dick. Yes. No, thank you. Right. Or I've seen people say, will all the decision makers be on this call? Because, if you and your husband need to talk finances, will he be here? And I'm like, listen, if you can't, if you're pitching me a 30K mastermind or program and you can't give me a moment to go have a discussion with my husband,
right,
that ain't going to work for me.
Yeah, it's really irresponsible, truly, in my opinion.
Me too. We have to see people as human beings. I love that you described
it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we can all succeed just the same. So yeah, I'm definitely with you. I remember having a conversation also with like a mastermind I was going to join, and the person on the other end was like, I shouldn't have to sell you. And I was like, well, I'm not asking you to sell me. I'm just asking you to talk to me.
Yeah.
I am going to be spending a lot of time with you. And don't we kind of want to know if this is like a date that, should go beyond this first one?
Yeah. And I kind of thing. Yeah. I can imagine that your entrepreneurs, highly sensitive entrepreneurs, probably get great referrals and continuity when they're starting the business off on that footing of, I see you, I'm here for you, I'm listening, I'm deeply listening, I'm empathetic, just that place of understanding.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You're absolutely spot on, because with so many highly sensitives and especially again in the entrepreneurial field that I mentor, it just kind of like bucks again, like a lot of the traditional marketing and sales training, where a lot of the marketing is about like, cast the wide net and as many people as possible. But again, as highly sensitives, we're so good at intimate relationships. And so there's, again, a lot of retraining that has to go on, which is like, wow, you can actually really have totally like whatever version of successful business that you want without having to do all of the big, flashy, massive launches or this, that, or the other with social media. Like, you just don't necessarily have to do all that. If you want to and you love it and that makes you so happy, great, we can do that. But you don't have to in order to have the successful business that you want.
I love that. I know one woman who makes an 8-figure business and you literally can't find her online. Like, she's like, I have no website. I have no social media. I am referral only. I am just in the right rooms with the right people that I choose.
Right. Like, exactly. Absolutely. Totally possible. 100%.
I love that so much. Is there anything that we missed that are highly sensitive people that are listening? Or maybe I know you've got something for them at the end that we'll talk about if they're going, well, I don't know if I'm highly sensitive or not. Is there any roadblock we need to get them around, or any footing, foothold that they're going to fall in that we need to tell them to do something different if they're listening and need some more advice?
Yeah, I think, we've been kind of touching on it, but maybe dancing around it a little bit. So to kind of go in more directly in regards to that aspect of comparison, because I find that really takes a lot of highly sensitives out, and not just within the business realm, but just within, personal relationships and life as well. And especially, in this day and age that we're living in, where everything is so public, everything is so available. There's so much that's happening to me online, and which especially over the last year, we're so grateful for. But it really is about how, you use our interconnected world as a tool, versus a metric of your self-value or your self-worth. And, as I've mentioned throughout our conversation so far, most of the highly sensitives who come to me, even if they understand that they're highly sensitive, they haven't necessarily gone through any type of in-depth training the way that we do in our program. So there tends to really still be this lingering aspect of comparison, always looking to the outside, seeing what others are doing, and again, using that as a measure. Now, I totally understand this is not limited to highly sensitives. Of course, this is a massive aspect, of a cultural challenge we're all experiencing right now. But again, the key with being highly sensitive is that we are only 20% of the population. So what that then means when you take it into cultural comparison is that if you're looking through that comparison lens, you're always going to fall up short. You're always going to come short. So it really is about, making a decision for yourself to really go through the process, to learn about who you are, to know who you are, to begin the process of really accepting and claiming who you are as a gift, how you can use your highly sensitive self as a strength, and then to untangle from that habitual aspect of comparison and be willing to be more like that 8-figure business owner that you described, which is, I'm solid, I'm clear, I'm confident in who I am, how I'm going about things. This is what feels good to me. And it doesn't really matter what everyone else is doing. So just real briefly along those lines, a teaching that I share in our training programs is what I refer to as the good enough business. And that really is the process of making a decision of like, what is my version of a good enough business? And for, one highly sensitive entrepreneur, it might be 3 clients. Like, I'm good, I'm solid, takes me where I need to go, provides me with what I need, I'm awesome. For someone else, it might be 30. If for someone, it might be like, I work 5 days a week. For someone else, it might be, I work 3. It looks and feels different for everyone. So to be willing to just be on that journey and really primarily for the reasons because you're going to be so much happier. You're going to be so much happier. And as a result, then you're really going to be of so much more service. And you just think about it and you just can see it. You can say like, oh yeah, that really does make sense. If I feel really good about who I am and what I'm doing, then of course, every life that I touch, that's gonna be positive. If I'm constantly questioning myself, constantly comparing myself, constantly feeling like I'm less than, it's not really going to matter how many clients you have because all that energy is going to go into the work. So that's the last little bit that I would add just as an invitation for anyone listening. You really find yourself in that spot, you can, again, go about it in a different way.
I love that. That's actually a question we ask on one of our pre-call or pre-working together questionnaires is, how do you define success? What does success look like to you? And at the end of our time, when we complete what we set out to do, how do you want it to feel? How do you want it to look?
Yeah.
Because we want to know that from the beginning. What do you want 50 clients and X amount, or do you want 2 clients? Because everybody's view of what makes them feel good. I love that good enough business. I love that term.
Yes.
You get to define that. Oh my God.
Right. For sure. Well, I have to give credit because it's not mine. I mean, the good enough business part is mine, but it really comes from educational psychology, which is a lot of my background. So there's a psychologist, Piaget, who talks about the good enough mother. And then a few years ago, I read an article in the New York Times that was using that phrase as in terms of good enough life. And this was before the pandemic. And I was like, yeah. And I went back and I looked at all my, research and notes around Piaget and just adapted that and applied that to what it really means to have a good enough business.
I love that. I love that your work is research-based. It's your own life lessons, being a highly sensitive entrepreneur. Your team has people who are highly sensitive.
For sure.
Like you said, right as you opened, where you said, I think that's so important that you have that frame of reference when you're helping people through that. So you've got a quiz. Tell us about that.
Yes. So it's really more of an assessment, and it's called a quiz just because that's an easier URL. So the URL is hsequiz.com, but I know that highly sensitives, they say quiz and it's immediately like, test. So it's not a test, it's just an assessment. And it's based off of Dr. Aaron's work, as well as with my additions for the entrepreneur. And as you go through the assessment, what you'll discover is either if you are a somewhat highly sensitive entrepreneur, or if you are a super highly sensitive entrepreneur, or if you're like me and you are a super uber highly sensitive entrepreneur. And depending on where you fall, somewhat super or super uber, you will then receive a success guide that helps walk you through the first steps to begin to work with yourself as a somewhat super or super uber highly sensitive entrepreneur, so you can begin to go about things differently and, again, happier, more successful.
Yeah, that may be the missing link for some people, just that awareness.
Definitely was for me.
Yeah. So I love that you came on. Thank you so much for sharing so generously your knowledge, your expertise. And listeners, don't worry, if you were driving and you didn't get the link for hsequiz.com, I will make sure to put that, as well as all of Heather's information, how you can reach out to her, contact her, follow up with her, do that assessment, and get in her world if you are highly sensitive, or even if you're not sure if you're highly sensitive, but things are still just not where you want them to be. I always say it never hurts to do something different. Fill out that assessment.
For sure. Yeah. Or someone or someone on your team, because that will make a difference too.
Absolutely. Heather, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Lisa. Thank you so much. I love the work that you're doing. Your community is so lucky.
Thank you. And listener, thank you for being here. I value your time. Come back to this if you need to. You have it as a resource. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time on the Lisa Pezik Show.